Ethan Cross stood at the edge of the bustling spaceport of Aurora Prime, his dark eyes scanning the crowd of aliens and humans moving between sleek starships and floating cargo pods. He had seen spaceports like this before, but there was something different about Aurora Prime. The energy here was sharper, more tense, as though the air itself anticipated something important. Today was not a regular day. Today, he would meet representatives from one of the most powerful alien empires in the galaxy, the Zirathians. Ethan's hand brushed the edge of his coat, a small gesture of habit. But his mind was focused entirely on the task ahead. He had been chosen as a human envoy because of his calm thinking under pressure, his ability to read situations quickly, and his unusual gift for noticing details others missed. Humans, in the galactic community, were often underestimated. Many aliens viewed them as clever, yes, but ultimately fragile and unprepared for true interstellar politics. Ethan intended to challenge that assumption quietly. Across the terminal, standing with the elegance only a royal could carry, was Prince Zelthar, the 19-year-old heir of the Zirathian Empire. His skin shimmered faintly in the bright lights of the spaceport, a living proof of Zirathian refinement. His eyes, a striking combination of silver and violet, scanned the crowd with an air of superiority. It was immediately clear to anyone looking that he thought himself above everyone else. Humans, in particular, seemed beneath him. When Zelthar's gaze fell on Ethan, his expression twisted into a slight smirk. The prince had heard about the young human envoy, a name whispered with cautious respect by some of the lower-ranking Zirathians. But respect did not temper Zelthar's arrogance. He did not feel the need to show courtesy to humans. In fact, the idea that a human could be anywhere near him in importance was laughable. "So," Zelthar said in a voice smooth and deliberate, but loud enough for those nearby to hear, "the fragile human dares to walk among us, thinking he is equal to the heirs of the stars?" The words dripped with contempt. He spoke in the galactic common tongue, ensuring that everyone present would understand his insult. A few aliens nearby tittered quietly, sensing the drama, while a few humans stiffened, unsure of how to respond. Many humans had spent their lives defending themselves, fighting wars, or negotiating trade deals, but rarely had any faced an open insult from an alien royal. Most would have responded, either with words or with some demonstration of skill or courage. But Ethan did not flinch. He felt the sting of the words. Of course, he was only human, after all. Yet, as he looked at Zelthar, he saw something more than arrogance. He saw vulnerability. Behind the perfect posture, behind the gleaming eyes, there was insecurity masked by superiority. Zelthar believed himself untouchable, but Ethan knew that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the quietest actions spoke the loudest. Ethan adjusted the strap of his satchel and simply turned away. Not a word escaped his lips, not a hint of anger, not a flinch, not a sign that the insult had touched him. He walked calmly through the spaceport, blending with the crowd, allowing the prince and the onlookers to stew in their confusion. For a moment, the space seemed to hold its breath. A young human, alone, had ignored the heir of a galactic empire. It was unthinkable to many. Zelthar's smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of irritation he had rarely felt before. Aliens around him whispered, wondering why the human did not respond. Was he too frightened? Too foolish? Or was he so confident that the insult did not matter? Ethan's calm, deliberate steps carried him past the gleaming ships and the merchants hawking alien artifacts. He did not need to confront the prince, because he already held power in the way he moved, and the way he chose not to react. Every alien who watched saw the subtle message. Humans could be underestimated, but they were not weak. As he passed a small group of Zirathian nobles, one of them, a middle-ranking officer with green-tinted skin, whispered to another, He walks as if he owns the stars. The other nodded. 40, 100 Bresses harm, and a skilled partner. Surprised. Humans rarely showed this kind of silent confidence. It was something different. Something alien in itself. Even to the aliens. Ethan reached a quieter section of the spaceport where human diplomats were assembling. He joined them without fanfare, greeted his colleagues with a nod, and prepared for the official introductions that would follow. No one spoke of the insult Zelthar had given. It was clear that Ethan had already made his point, simply by walking away. Meanwhile, across the terminal, Zelthar's eyes followed him. He did not understand. How could this human ignore him? How could he walk away from a direct challenge without fear or submission? It was not supposed to happen. Royals were respected, feared, and obeyed. Humans were not. Yet here was Ethan, a young human, demonstrating something that Zelthar had never seen. Self-control, composure, quiet strength. Zelthar turned to one of his advisors, his tone sharp with frustration. Why does he not react? Why does he not acknowledge me? The advisor shrugged, unsure how to answer. Perhaps, he said cautiously, humans are not like other beings, my prince. The prince huffed softly, unconsciously pacing in a small circle. He had been taught all his life that respect could be commanded by presence, by power, by the weight of a name. Yet this human, small and seemingly fragile, had ignored him entirely. The notion was almost unbearable. Ethan, unaware of the prince's growing irritation, continued calmly. He walked through the port, observing the details around him. Every starship, every merchant stall, every alien race had patterns and weaknesses, if one knew where to look. Today, he thought, humans are underestimated, but they also observe, they adapt, and they endure. That was a lesson he intended to teach, without raising his voice. As the announcements for the diplomatic summit began, Ethan found his assigned station and took his place. Other delegates arrived, a mixture of humans, aliens, and intermediaries. Conversations began in quiet tones, negotiations tentatively unfolding. Ethan's mind, however, lingered on the encounter with Zelthar. It had been brief, only a few seconds in the crowded terminal, but it had already taught him something valuable. Pride and arrogance, even in the most powerful beings, could be exposed with the smallest gestures. Sometimes, silence was louder than words, and patience stronger than force. By the time the human delegation's briefing ended, the sun of Aurora Prime had begun to set, casting a golden glow over the city-spanning spaceport. Ethan looked out at the horizon, the lights of starships blinking in the distance, and felt a quiet satisfaction. Today, he had demonstrated the human way. Observe, remain calm, and respond with precision when necessary. The insult had not shaken him, but it had set the stage for something far greater. Prince Zelthar, for all his power and wealth, had unknowingly encountered a challenge unlike any he had faced before. A human had walked away, without fear, without anger, without submission, and in that simple act, a seed of doubt had been planted in the mind of a young royal, a seed that would grow over the coming days into curiosity, astonishment, and perhaps even respect. Ethan turned from the window and began preparations for the evening, unaware that the next steps of the diplomatic summit would test both humans and aliens in ways no one could yet predict. The silent lesson of the spaceport encounter had already been delivered. Humans were not as fragile as many believed. And sometimes, the greatest power lay not in words, but in restraint. The next day, the human delegation arrived at the orbital palace of the Zirathian Empire. The palace hovered above the planet like a gleaming jewel, its spires and towers reflecting the sunlight in every color of the spectrum. It was vast, elegant, and intimidating. Ethan felt a small thrill as he stepped onto the landing platform. He had seen many alien structures before, but nothing matched the sheer scale and precision of Xyrothian architecture. Every surface was polished, every edge sharp and clean, and every light carefully positioned. It was a world designed to impress and overwhelm. Prince Zelthar was already there, waiting with his retinue. His eyes, bright and alert, scanned the humans as they approached. Despite the events of the previous day, he carried himself with the same pride and confidence. Though Ethan noticed a subtle tension behind the prince's posture, the young human envoy had left an impression, and that impression had not faded. "Welcome, humans," Zelthar said, his voice polite but carefully measured. "I hope you are ready to witness the capabilities of our empire." There was an unmistakable note of challenge in his words, though he tried to mask it. Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "We are honored, Your Highness," he replied calmly, his tone neutral but steady. He had learned long ago that respect was earned by action, not by flattery. The group was led through corridors that seemed impossibly large, walls made of translucent materials showing glimpses of stars beyond, and ceilings that arched high above, decorated with flowing patterns of light. Every detail spoke of power and refinement, yet Ethan's eyes caught small anomalies, slight energy fluctuations in the shielding systems, tiny misalignments that most visitors would never notice. He made a mental note. As they entered the central hall, a demonstration of the palace's energy systems began. Massive crystalline cores glowed with radiant power, humming softly. Zelthar moved with a flourish, showing off how the energy flowed, how it could sustain the palace for centuries without interruption. The surrounding aliens murmured in admiration, clearly impressed. Ethan watched closely, noting patterns in the energy surges. His understanding of engineering, though based on human technology, allowed him to recognize potential weaknesses in the alien system. He did not speak yet. It was not time to display his knowledge. Observation came first. During the demonstration, one of the lower-ranking Xyrathians accidentally triggered a minor surge in the central core. The energy flickered unpredictably, threatening to cascade into the surrounding systems. Panic flickered across some of the attendants' faces, though Zelthar quickly moved to stabilize the surge. Still, Ethan's mind raced. He realized that with a simple adjustment, one that humans could execute without the intricate protocols of Xyrothian procedures, the system could return to stability without any risk. He stepped forward calmly. "If you allow me, I can help stabilize the flow," he said quietly, not raising his voice, but projecting confidence in his words. Zelthar turned sharply, surprised that the human dared to intervene, but he did not interrupt. With a few careful gestures and minor adjustments, Ethan rebalanced the energy distribution. The glow in the crystalline cores returned to a steady rhythm, the minor surges eliminated. The hall filled with a quiet hum, the kind that spoke of smooth and stable operation. Several Xyrathians glanced at each other in astonishment. A human had prevented a potentially dangerous incident in the palace, something they would have assumed impossible. Zelthar's face remained composed, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. He had underestimated humans, and now he had to face the fact that this young envoy had not only observed the problem but resolved it with precision. "Interesting," Galthar said, his tone carefully neutral. "It appears humans possess some unexpected abilities." He paused, studying Ethan as if trying to understand him. "Perhaps I have judged your species too quickly." Ethan nodded slightly, but did not respond further. He knew that words could inflate or deflate egos unnecessarily. Actions, he thought, carried far more weight. The rest of the tour continued without incident, though Zelthar's demeanor had subtly shifted. He watched the humans more closely now, less with disdain and more with curiosity. Later, when they visited the palace's strategy chamber, Ethan noticed something else. The holographic displays used to simulate planetary systems and defense grids were sophisticated, but rigid. The Zerathians relied heavily on predictable algorithms, on the assumption that all threats could be calculated in advance. Humans, by contrast, often thrived in unpredictability, adapting quickly to situations where rules changed or information was incomplete. During a demonstration, Zelthar's advisor presented a complex simulation, showing how the Empire could defend a neighboring system from a potential enemy fleet. The Zerathians executed their commands flawlessly. Yet a few minor errors crept into the simulation, small timing miscalculations that could have been catastrophic if left unchecked. Ethan leaned forward, offering a suggestion, a simple adjustment that accounted for unpredictable variables, a method the Zerathians had not considered because their systems were designed to follow strict rules. The adjustment was subtle, almost invisible, yet it corrected the errors perfectly. The simulation completed without flaw. Again, the Zerathians whispered among themselves. The humans had once more demonstrated ingenuity and flexibility, two qualities the Empire had rarely associated with them. Zelthar's pride battled with his growing awareness. This human, seemingly ordinary, possessed a mind capable of seeing solutions that the most sophisticated Zerathians had overlooked. By the end of the day, the human delegation had toured every major part of the palace. They observed the energy systems, the defense simulations, and even the palace's autonomous maintenance drones. At every step, Ethan noticed patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities, all without boasting or drawing attention. His quiet competence left an impression far stronger than any loud speech or demonstration could have achieved. As the sun set over Zerathia, painting the palace in hues of gold and crimson, Ethan paused on a balcony overlooking the city. He reflected on the day's events. Humans were often underestimated across the galaxy, but today they had quietly demonstrated what made them remarkable: observation, adaptability, and the ability to solve problems creatively under pressure. Meanwhile, Zelthar retreated to his private chambers, the prince's usual confidence tempered by a growing sense of respect and perhaps a touch of worry. He had underestimated humans, and now he could not deny their potential. A seed of curiosity had been planted, one that would grow as he continued to interact with Ethan and his delegation. For Ethan, the day was not about winning or proving superiority. It was about quietly showing that humans belonged among the stars, not as pawns or bystanders, but as thinkers, problem-solvers, and contributors to the galaxy's future. The prince's earlier insult had been a challenge, but it had also provided an opportunity. In silence and action, Ethan had answered that challenge, leaving an impression that words alone could never convey. The day ended with the humans returning to their quarters, weary but satisfied. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new interactions, and new chances to demonstrate human capability. And Ethan knew that, step by step, humans were reshaping how the galaxy saw them, not through force, but through intelligence, patience, and quiet confidence. The next morning, the human delegation assembled in the main hall of the orbital palace. Today, the atmosphere was different. A challenge had been set, and everyone sensed the tension in the air. Prince Zelthar, still young and prideful, had decided that words and demonstrations were no longer enough. He wanted a test, a personal contest to prove that humans were, in his mind, still inferior. Ethan arrived calmly, unhurried and observant, as if he had expected this all along. The hall itself was a vast space, designed to impress and intimidate. The floor shimmered like liquid crystal, and holographic panels displayed rotating stars and planets. Above them, the ceiling was a dome of pure light, giving the impression that the universe itself watched their movements. "Human," Zelthar said, his voice carrying through the hall with authority. "Today, you will participate in a duel of skill and strategy. It is a tradition of my people. You will not face me with weapons or strength alone. You will face me with your mind, your reflexes, and your adaptability." Ethan nodded. "I am ready, Your Highness," he replied, his tone steady. He did not display fear or arrogance, only calm readiness. This simple composure seemed to unsettle Xelthar, who was accustomed to his opponents reacting emotionally, not with quiet confidence. The duel would take place in a zero-gravity chamber, a sphere suspended within the palace by invisible energy fields. Inside, participants floated freely, with handholds, grips, and platforms that allowed them to maneuver. The challenge combined mental puzzles, spatial awareness, and rapid decision-making. Even the most agile beings could struggle in zero gravity. But humans were known for creativity, adaptability, and unconventional thinking. As the chamber sealed, the room dimmed, and small floating platforms and holographic displays lit up. Xelthar moved first, his motions precise and controlled. He solved the initial puzzles with ease, manipulating floating objects and aligning energy flows according to Xerothian protocols. Ethan observed, his mind working quickly. He noticed patterns in Xelthar's approach, predictable sequences that relied heavily on repetition and strict logic. When it was Ethan's turn, he did not rush. Instead, he studied the puzzle carefully, considering not just the immediate goal, but how each action might affect the sequence of events to come. Humans were not naturally adapted to zero gravity, but they compensated with intuition, observation, and creativity. Ethan twisted and floated, moving in ways that Xelthar would not have expected. He used momentum, angles, and improvisation, solving problems that relied not on brute precision, but on adaptive thinking. At first, the prince's confidence showed no sign of faltering. He smirked, certain that he could outmatch any human. But as the rounds progressed, it became clear that Ethan's unpredictability was a challenge unlike any he had faced. The human did not follow the rules blindly. He improvised, adapted, and even corrected mistakes before they could cause setbacks. Observers, both human and alien, leaned forward, amazed at the contest unfolding before them. A human, small and seemingly fragile, was holding his own against a royal of a powerful alien empire. The duel was not about strength, speed, or raw intelligence alone. It was about flexibility, creativity, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. These were qualities that Xerothians, trained to value precision and control, often overlooked. At one point, a complex pattern of floating holographic energy nodes appeared in the chamber. Xelthar aligned them according to the traditional sequence, expecting efficiency and perfection to secure his victory. Ethan, however, noticed a hidden opportunity, a shortcut in the pattern, not visible in the Xerathian manual, that allowed him to complete the sequence faster without error. His solution was unconventional, elegant, and effective. Xelthar paused, mid-motion, his expression tightening. He had not anticipated this approach. The young human had not only matched him but found a solution that the Xerathian protocols had ignored. Pride and surprise warred within him. He realized, with a mixture of frustration and admiration, that humans were capable of thinking differently, and that difference could be as powerful as raw skill. The final stage of the duel combined all the challenges: spatial navigation, problem-solving, and quick reaction to unexpected events. Ethan moved with precision and creativity, while Xelthar relied on training and tradition. The results were astonishingly close. For every step Xelthar executed flawlessly, Ethan countered with an unorthodox solution that matched or exceeded it. When the duel ended, neither had clearly won. Floating in the center of the chamber, both took a moment to catch their breath and stabilize themselves. Observers held their silence, unsure how to react. For the first time, Xelthar felt something unfamiliar: respect for a human who had not needed strength or weapons to prove his worth. Ethan had accomplished what no one had expected. He had met a royal on equal footing, using intelligence, composure, and creativity. Zelthar finally spoke, his tone cautious, yet tinged with something like admiration. You are unlike any human I have encountered. Your mind does not follow rules blindly. You adapt. You anticipate. You overcome. He paused, as if measuring the weight of his words. Perhaps my assumptions about your species were mistaken. Ethan nodded, but offered no words of pride. He had no need to. His actions had already spoken. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy. Yet their strength lay not in what others could easily measure, but in their creativity, their adaptability, and their persistence. As the observers slowly began to clap, some in astonishment, some in respect, Xelthar's advisors exchanged glances. The duel had been more than a test of skill. It had been a revelation. A human had proven that intelligence and resourcefulness could rival even the most carefully trained alien royal. Ethan floated toward the exit of the chamber, steady and unhurried. He offered a brief nod to Zelthar, acknowledging the duel, but without arrogance. The prince met the nod with a mixture of frustration and curiosity. He had hoped to humiliate the human, to reaffirm his superiority. But instead, he had learned something far more important. Humans could be clever, adaptable, and even brilliant in ways the Zerathians had never considered. Outside the chamber, the human delegation exchanged quiet smiles. Ethan had remained composed, and his quiet confidence had set a powerful example. They understood now what he had demonstrated. Strength was not always measured by force, and victory could take many forms. Sometimes it came from patience, observation, and the courage to think differently. Zelthar retreated to a private balcony, watching the humans leave the chamber. He felt a strange combination of frustration and admiration. He had underestimated them, and he could no longer ignore the fact that humans were capable of remarkable thinking. The duel had taught him something that no words or proclamations could convey. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and intelligent in ways that even a royal could not fully control. Ethan, meanwhile, returned to the human quarters, quiet but satisfied. He knew that the duel had shifted perceptions, not only among the Zerathians, but within the humans themselves. Confidence, intelligence, and composure could turn a challenge into an opportunity. And sometimes, the quietest actions carried the loudest message. The day ended with a sense of cautious optimism. Humans had shown they could face challenges that were unfamiliar and difficult, not by force or aggression, but by relying on their minds and adaptability. The seed of respect had been planted in the mind of Prince Zelthar, a seed that would grow over the coming days. And for Ethan, the duel was not an end, but a step toward proving that humans were a species to be counted among the stars, not as pawns, but as equals capable of remarkable achievement. The following day, the summit reached a turning point. A volatile star system near Zerathian space had been destabilized by unusual gravitational anomalies, threatening nearby planets. Both the Zerathian Empire and the human delegation were asked to assist in a collaborative mission to stabilize the system. The task was complex, requiring precise calculations, quick thinking, and seamless coordination across species. Ethan stood at the command station aboard the human flagship, reviewing data streams projected onto translucent panels. The anomalies were unpredictable, shifting gravitational fields that could destroy orbital platforms or scatter fleets if mismanaged. The Zerathian fleet had arrived in full force, their ships bristling with advanced technology. Yet even with such power, they struggled to adjust to the rapidly changing conditions. Prince Zelthar arrived, his posture still regal, but his expression more thoughtful than the previous days. He had watched Ethan closely, aware that the human's calm intelligence had repeatedly surprised him. Now, in a real mission with real stakes, he would see the full measure of human capability. Your approach will need to account for fluctuations we cannot predict, Xelthar said, his tone careful. Our technology is superior, but the system is unstable. We require precision. Ethan nodded. We will need to combine observation, intuition, and rapid adaptation, he replied. Technology alone will not be enough. Humans excel in adjusting to unexpected changes. If we work together, we can stabilize the system. The mission began. The human ships moved in coordination with the Zerathian fleet. But soon, the limitations of relying on rigid procedures became apparent. The Zerathian commanders issued orders with flawless execution. But the anomalies shifted faster than their calculations could adapt. Platforms drifted dangerously close to unstable orbits, and a small energy surge from one of the gravitational nodes threatened to scatter part of the fleet. Ethan observed quietly, calculating solutions as the situation evolved. He did not panic or demand authority. Instead, he suggested subtle adjustments, guiding the human fleet to compensate for shifts in the anomalies, while recommending precise modifications to Zerathian maneuvers. His suggestions were small, but effective, preventing collisions and stabilizing drifting platforms. Zelthar watched Ethan's methods carefully. He realized that humans did not follow the predictable, formalized approaches of the Zerathians. Instead, they combined logic with instinct, calculation with improvisation. It was a different kind of intelligence, one that complemented technology rather than simply relying on it. As the mission progressed, the humans' adaptability became increasingly evident. A sudden gravitational surge threatened to collapse a secondary orbital station. Zerathian ships hesitated, waiting for a calculated solution from their supercomputers. Ethan, however, immediately proposed a course correction using the human fleet to absorb part of the energy and redirect the surge. His plan was unconventional, but it worked flawlessly. The station remained intact, and the Zerathian commanders began to exchange impressed glances. By the time the anomalies were stabilized, the collaboration had become a symphony of combined skills. Humans, Zerathians, and other allied species worked together, each contributing strengths. The humans' ability to adapt, to improvise, and to see opportunities where others saw only risk had been instrumental in the mission's success. After the operation, the fleets gathered in orbit around the star system. Prince Zelthar approached Ethan, his expression sober and reflective. "You have led your people and guided our fleet with skill and foresight," he said quietly. "Your species' adaptability is remarkable. I can see now that we have underestimated you." Ethan inclined his head in acknowledgement, keeping his voice neutral and calm. "We only work to solve the problem, Your Highness. Humans have always relied on observation, cooperation, and adaptability. When challenges arise, we adjust." Zelthar studied him for a moment, as if weighing the depth of Ethan's statement. For the first time, he felt something new, a mixture of respect and humility. He had entered this mission expecting to lead and instruct. Yet a human had demonstrated leadership, insight, and creativity in ways that surpassed even his own expectations. The other delegates also noticed. Whispered conversations circulated among the Zerathians and their allies. Humans, long considered unpredictable and sometimes unreliable, had played a decisive role in stabilizing one of the most dangerous systems in their sector. Their success was not due to force, not due to superior technology, but to intelligence, quick thinking, and the ability to work under pressure. That evening, the human delegation returned to their quarters, exhausted but satisfied. Ethan reflected on the mission. Each step had confirmed something he already knew. Humans had qualities that could not be measured solely by strength or technology. Observation, ingenuity, adaptability, and cooperation were the true markers of capability. These qualities had allowed them to stand on equal footing with one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Prince Zelthar remained in his private chambers, staring at the holographic projection of the stabilized star system. He had spent his life being trained to rely on precision, control, and superior technology. Yet, today, he had seen a species that operated differently, effectively, and successfully. The human mind, with its combination of logic and creativity, had proven a force to be reckoned with. Zelthar felt a flicker of admiration, though he would not admit it aloud. Over the following days, interactions between humans and Xerothians changed subtly. Zelthar observed Ethan closely, noting not only his intelligence, but also his restraint and humility. Ethan never boasted about his contributions. He never demanded recognition. He acted, he solved, and he moved forward, quietly. This composure contrasted sharply with the Xerathian approach, which often equated loudness and display with competence. During the final debriefing, Zelthar spoke before all the delegates. "The humans have demonstrated qualities that my empire has not fully appreciated," he announced. "Their intelligence, adaptability, and strategic thinking have contributed to the success of this mission. It is clear that they deserve respect and recognition for their achievements." Ethan remained silent, standing among his delegation. He did not need words to convey his message. His actions had spoken louder than any announcement, louder than any speech. Humans were no longer simply a minor species to be tolerated. They were capable, intelligent, and influential members of the galactic community. The mission had changed perceptions not just among the Xerathians, but among all the species present. Humans had earned respect, not through intimidation or force, but through intelligence, adaptability, and collaboration. Ethan's leadership had exemplified these qualities perfectly, setting a standard that would be remembered in the years to come. That night, as the human delegation prepared to rest, Ethan looked out from the observation deck at the stabilized star system. Lights of distant ships glimmered like stars themselves, and he felt a quiet satisfaction. Today had proven that humans were capable of far more than many believed. Quiet action, careful thought, and adaptability were powerful tools, and humans wielded them well. Meanwhile, Prince Zelthar, observing from a nearby balcony, reflected on what he had learned. He had entered the mission confident, certain of his superiority. Yet, he had witnessed human ingenuity, flexibility, and leadership in action. A seed of respect had grown, and for the first time, Zelthar considered that humans might not only belong among the stars, but could also shape the galaxy in ways he had never imagined. Humans had quietly earned their place among allies and rivals alike. Their strength was not always visible, their victories not always loud, but their impact was undeniable. And for Ethan, that silent recognition, both from his peers and from a young alien royal, was more meaningful than any words or accolades could ever be. The summit had ended, and the human delegation prepared to depart from Xerathian space. Ships hovered over the orbital palace, engines humming quietly, ready to carry humans back to their own systems. The mission to stabilize the star system had been a success, and the humans had proven themselves capable, adaptable, and intelligent in ways the Xerothians had not fully expected. Ethan stood on the observation deck of the flagship, looking out at the sprawling expanse of Xerathia below. The palace glowed in the fading light of the nearby star, a monument to the Empire's power and elegance. But for all its grandeur, Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that humans had earned something far more important than admiration of architecture or technology. They had earned respect. Prince Zelthar approached, his usual confident stride tempered with thoughtfulness. The prince had spent days observing Ethan's actions, witnessing the calm determination, creativity, and intelligence that humans displayed. He had expected arrogance or fear, but instead, he found composure and subtle strength. It was a lesson that Zelthar would not forget. "You have impressed me," Zelthar said carefully, choosing his words. "Not just with your skills, but with your mind and restraint." I believed humans to be clever, yes, but limited. I see now that I was mistaken. Ethan inclined his head respectfully. Thank you, Your Highness. Humans have always relied on observation, creativity, and cooperation. We do not always display our strengths loudly, but we act when it matters most. Zelthar studied him for a long moment, as if measuring the truth in those words. He had expected a human to be quick to boast or to seek recognition, but Ethan had done neither. His quiet confidence, combined with clear competence, was something foreign to the prince, yet profoundly admirable. The two stood in silence for a few minutes, the hum of ships and distant stars filling the space around them. Ethan's calm demeanor, even in the presence of alien royalty, sent a message stronger than any words could. Humans were capable, intelligent, and unafraid to meet challenges on equal terms. Zelthar began, then paused, searching for the right words. Perhaps there is more for me to learn from your species. You act in ways we have not anticipated, and yet, your results speak for themselves. You have my respect, Ethan Cross, and that of your people. Ethan gave a modest nod. Respect earned through action is always more meaningful than respect demanded through words, he replied. There was no pride in his tone, only calm acknowledgement. The human delegation began boarding their flagship. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for departure. Ethan followed, casting one last glance at the palace and at Zelthar. The young prince watched him go, a flicker of admiration in his eyes, mixed with the curiosity of someone who had realized that humans were not simply another species to tolerate. They were formidable allies and worthy counterparts. As the human ship lifted off, leaving the orbit of Zerathia, Ethan reflected on the events of the past days. A single insult at a spaceport, a moment of arrogance from a young alien royal, had sparked a chain of events that allowed humans to demonstrate their true strengths, not through force, not through intimidation, but through observation, creativity, adaptability, and composure. The galaxy would remember that humans could stand on equal footing with even the most powerful alien empires. Prince Zelthar returned to his quarters, silent and thoughtful. He had expected a display of weakness or submission, but instead, he had witnessed skill, intelligence, and quiet authority. The young human had turned every challenge into an opportunity to demonstrate human potential. It was a lesson Zelthar would carry with him, shaping how he interacted with humans in the future. The seed of respect had grown into something strong, a recognition that humans could not be underestimated. Meanwhile, the human crew settled into their ship's routine, preparing for the long journey home. Ethan observed the stars through the observation window, reflecting on the quiet power of restraint and intelligence. The galaxy was full of beings who relied on pride, technology, or strength to assert themselves. Humans, however, had another tool: the ability to think creatively, to adapt quickly, and to act decisively when it mattered most. As the ship moved further from Zerathia, Ethan considered the future. Humans had taken the first steps toward establishing a respected place among the stars. They had earned allies, gained knowledge, and proven that intelligence and composure were as valuable as any weapon or fleet. The events of these days would ripple through the galaxy, changing perceptions of humanity in subtle but lasting ways. Prince Elthar remained on his palace balcony long after the humans had gone, watching the distant lights of their departing ship fade into the void. He thought about the young envoy who had walked silently through the spaceport, faced a royal duel, and led a collaborative mission with grace and skill. That human had done more than complete a mission. He had changed the way an alien prince viewed an entire species. In the quiet of the orbital palace, Zelthar considered what he had learned. Strength was not always loud, power was not always visible, and leadership was not always asserted through dominance. Sometimes, the greatest impact came from quiet confidence, careful observation, and intelligent action. Humans had demonstrated these qualities in ways he could not ignore. Ethan, aboard the ship, felt no triumph or boastfulness. He had acted as humans always did, thoughtfully, with purpose, and with an understanding that true strength often went unnoticed until it mattered most. The respect of allies and rivals alike was earned quietly, without need for words. As Zerathia grew smaller in the distance, Ethan prepared reports and recommendations for future missions, considering the potential of human collaboration with alien species. The events of the past days had proven one undeniable truth. Humans were capable, adaptable, and intelligent in ways that could shape the galaxy. They had shown that even when underestimated, they could meet challenges head-on and emerge with respect intact. Prince Zelthar, for his part, would never forget the lessons he had learned from a single human envoy. His pride had been tempered, his perspective broadened, and his respect earned through action rather than words. The young royal understood, at last, that humans were not to be dismissed or underestimated. And so, as the human ship moved into the vastness of space, a quiet chapter of recognition and respect had been written. The galaxy had witnessed the intelligence, composure, and creativity of humanity. The insult that had begun at a bustling spaceport had transformed into something far greater, proof that humans, even when underestimated, could rise to meet any challenge, earning respect not through force or arrogance, but through action, insight, and quiet strength. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and in that infinite expanse, humanity had taken its rightful place, not as pawns, not as observers, but as equal participants in the story of the galaxy. The young alien prince, the fleets of distant civilizations, and the humans themselves would all carry the memory of these days. Knowing that respect is earned by deeds, and that intelligence, courage, and composure could shine brighter than any star. Ethan stood once more at the observation window, the ship's engines humming softly behind him. He felt a calm satisfaction, a sense of purpose, fulfilled. Humans had proven themselves, and the universe had taken notice. Their journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: humanity would be remembered, respected, and valued among the stars.